Although it's not a common incident, motion sickness and vomiting are situations a tandem pilot must be ready for. Ideally, you should always have some sick bags attached to your harness so the passenger can use them if needed. But if you don't have one, or the passenger starts throwing up unexpectedly, there's a position we can adopt to make sure neither the pilot nor the passenger gets covered in vomit. Motion sickness, also called kinetosis, happens when there's a disconnection between what the inner ear and the eyes tell the brain. The inner ear feels movement, but the passenger's eyes don't perceive it. That mismatch of information causes the feeling of dizziness, and as a result, the person may start vomiting. In this flight, just a few seconds before vomiting, the passenger told me he was feeling sick. That warning gave me time to take the right position and help him lean to one side so he wouldn't get himself dirty or get vomit on his own body. It's not complicated. There are a few key points. First, we must fly downwind. If we're flying into the wind, the airflow will push the vomit back toward the passenger and the pilot, making a bigger mess. Once you're flying downwind, help the passenger lean to one side. Ideally, you can have him lean under the risers. That lets the passenger recline well to one side of the glider. Make sure it's the side where the wind will carry the vomit away. If you lean him toward the wind, it'll blow it right back onto you both. Once the passenger is leaning to one side, the pilot should move to the opposite side, keep both legs together, and lean the body to the opposite direction. By doing this, we achieve two important things. First, we maintain our heading, and second, we avoid getting dirty. When the passenger starts feeling better, we can bring him back to a neutral position. But always stay alert, it's very likely he might feel sick again. We must also evaluate the passenger's physical condition. Even though motion sickness is the most common cause, we shouldn't rule out that vomiting could be due to an illness or food poisoning. That's why we must constantly check if the passenger is conscious, breathing normally, and feeling okay. If we notice any deterioration in his condition or loss of consciousness, besides landing quickly, we should be prepared to call for medical help. In any case, whether the passenger recovers or not, we should land as soon as possible. We shouldn't continue the flight. Even though vomiting may seem harmless, it causes discomfort, since the passenger's clothes or hands are likely to get dirty and he won't feel comfortable flying anymore. And remember, vomiting could also be a symptom of something more serious. So we shouldn't keep flying after a passenger vomits or if he feels severe nausea that causes discomfort. That said, we must not rush into an emergency landing. Vomiting is not a medical emergency. It gives us plenty of time to make a normal, controlled landing in our usual landing area. What we should do is land promptly, but normally, not with emergency maneuvers. The passenger's life isn't at risk. But a rushed or unsafe landing could put both the pilot and passenger in danger. If we're flying over an area with people, a town, a park, or a beach, try to avoid flying directly above them because vomit doesn't evaporate like water as it falls. It can actually land in solid form and hit someone below. That's not only extremely unpleasant, it could also pose a health risk, since we don't know what illness the passenger might have. Now, if you couldn't manage to place the passenger sideways and both of you ended up dirty, don't panic. I've seen cases where both pilot and passenger were completely soaked in vomit. If that happens, stay calm. It's an unpleasant situation, but it's not dangerous.
Panicking or getting disgusted could make you take wrong decisions, and that would put both lives at risk. So if you're covered in vomit, just stay calm and land as soon as possible, but without radical or emergency maneuvers. Once on the ground, you can start cleaning up. If you have a first aid kit nearby, first wash your hands, then put on latex gloves before handling the vomit. If you have a face mask, it's also a good idea to wear one. Once you're properly protected, start cleaning yourself first. Remove the clothes you can, set them aside, and for those you can't remove, like pants or your shirt, clean them as best as you can. After removing the excess vomit, help your passenger clean up as well, as much as possible. Then you can try to clean or disinfect your flight equipment if you can. If not, suspend flights for the day or use a different harness. What you should never do is keep flying with equipment that's been contaminated with vomit, because you could infect another passenger. Again, we don't know what illness the person might have had. Most likely it's just motion sickness, but we can't be sure. Some final recommendations to prevent passengers from feeling sick. First, avoid making flights that are too long. Most passengers don't want to climb for hours or fly cross-country. They just want to enjoy the view and experience the feeling of flight. A flight of 15 to 20 minutes is usually more than enough. Long, bumpy flights in thermals of 30 minutes or more will significantly increase the chance of the passenger vomiting. Whenever possible, fly in calm conditions. I know that's not always possible in thermal flying, but if you can give the passenger a smooth flight, do it. Try flying earlier in the morning or later in the afternoon, and avoid the hours of strongest thermals, usually between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. Those hours can also be more turbulent and even dangerous in some flying sites. Another recommendation: avoid sharp maneuvers or acrobatics, even if the passenger asks for them. Not only will this reduce the chance of nausea, but it will also lower the risk of accidents. A tandem flight should be smooth and level. If we want to give the passenger a bit of excitement, we can do small pitch movements, a little dive and a climb, and the passenger will often feel thrilled by that. We can also do gentle swings, turning one way and then the other with less than 30 degrees of bank. That's usually more than enough for most passengers.
If we do more aggressive maneuvers, we'll risk making the passenger sick. Another cause of nausea is when the passenger has eaten too much or consumed alcohol before the flight. Even though we can't fully control that, we can prevent it by asking a few questions beforehand or by noticing if the passenger shows signs of intoxication. In that case, it's best to avoid flying altogether. Not just because he could vomit, but because it could compromise safety. Well, that's all about this topic of passengers vomiting during tandem flights. If you have any recommendations to prevent nausea or motion sickness, leave them in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up if you found it useful. Thank you very much, and see you in the next video.